Hello, my name is Graham Hughes and I'm going to be your tutor for this webinar today. I'm going to show you a demonstration of some of the key features of MAXQDA in the next 45 minutes or so, and I'll then open up the chat facility so that you can ask questions which I'll attempt to answer with the help of further demonstrations. Just a quick item about me. I'm based in England. I've worked with MAXQDA for over 10 years with all kinds of software for over 30 years. Now, MAXQDA was first created in 1989, and it's grown and developed as the capabilities of computers and software have enlarged. It started off as a text analysis program, but now can handle many more kinds of data, including images, audio, and video, as well as a wide variety of text formats. I think this program is particularly good for helping researchers bring different types of data together to see how they can provide insights into a central topic. And I have to say I love this program because it's intuitive and easy to use. Now, that doesn't mean that it's simplistic. On the contrary, it's extremely powerful. But it does mean that you don't need to use much of your own brain power thinking about how to operate the program, and that leaves most of it for thinking about your research questions. Now, I'll be working today with the Windows version of MAXQDA 2020. This is a new version of the program that was launched only last month. As always with MAXQDA, there is strong continuity from previous versions of the program. This program also runs on Apple Mac computers where it looks almost exactly the same as this. So if you are a Mac user, please stay with us. This webinar will be just as useful for you as it will be for the Windows users. Now, we just had a little rush of people arriving. Let me just make a note. Okay, that'll do. Right, so here is the login screen. In the top left-hand corner, there's space for a username. On your own computer, you only need to put that in once. It will remember it ever after. But if you ever find yourself working in a team project, it can be very useful if everyone has a unique name because the program keeps track of who has done what. There are three big buttons down here to start a new project, which you'll need to do one day, to navigate to an existing project or open one of the examples, or you can also open from a long list of already used projects down below. There's lots of access to video tutorials and manuals and things over on the right, an opportunity to send feedback to MAXQDA, lots of things, but let's just open up the English language example and get into the program itself. So here we are. Here is the MAXQDA screen. I'll just do a quick tour around the screen before we get into actually doing things. So across the top we have the menu ribbon, or the menu, each of which menu is associated with the ribbon. I'm on the home menu at the moment. If I jump to the analysis menu, we get a different ribbon underneath it, and so on. At the extreme right-hand end are some small but very significant buttons. The query one takes you directly to the online manual. The smiley allows you to give feedback to MAXQDA. The gear wheel allows you to set preferences within the program. I haven't got time to go into those, but very significant, we've got a global undo function here, button here. So if you've made a catastrophic error, if you discover it pretty soon after you've made it, you've got a chance of getting back to where you were. Underneath the menus and ribbons, there are four windows or panels that make up the main working area of the screen. Let's quickly look around each of them. I'll start in the top left. This is where we have the document system, and this is where we create or rather import and organize your data in documents, and they can be in groups and so on. I'll show you how to do that in a little while. You double click on a document to open it in the document browser to the right. So I just double clicked on Joanna, and now over here in the document browser I've got the transcript of an interview with someone called Joanna, where I can read it, and look, you can see colourful brackets here in the margin indicating in this example project where some coding work has already been done. So that takes me down to the code system in the bottom left-hand corner of my screen at the moment. This is where we can create and organize codes, and I'll show you how to do that in a moment. Grounded theorists amongst you, please don't panic at the sight of some hierarchical structure in the code system. This is purely for demonstration purposes. As a general point, MAXQDA never imposes a methodology on you. It is your task as the analyst or researcher to select your methodology and then use the tools of MAXQDA in ways that are consistent with your chosen methodology. The last panel is called Retrieve Segments. It's currently empty. We'll come back to that a little bit later on when we've done some coding work, and I'll show you how you can retrieve selected segments according to selected documents and selected codes, and MAXQDA will display in this section all of the data segments which are attached to the selected codes and fall within one of the selected documents. Still touring the screen, very significant across the bottom of the screen is the status bar. And when we get to retrieving data, the first three fields along this left-hand end of the status bar are very significant. They tell us how many documents we're working with, how many codes, and hence how many coded segments have been retrieved. And there's other standard information there. Now, the four windows can be moved around in different arrangements and so on. Each has a button on the home ribbon. If I don't want the retrieve segments for a while, I can turn that off with that button. I might even choose to turn the document system off and reduce my screen to just two panels, the code system and the document browser. I might well set my screen up like this when I'm in deep coding mode, really concentrating very much on a single document and its codes. I've got a full height panel. But when I want to change to another document, I'll need to come back to the home ribbon and restore the document system with a single click there. And if I want to check something against other documents, I might need to do a retrieval. I can restore the retrieve segments with one click there. This layout of the four panels is not the only one you can have. These little buttons on the home ribbon allow you a choice of four different arrangements. Let me just quickly change to this particular one. If you're lucky enough to have a particularly wide screen monitor, or even more lucky to have two monitors, this layout might be even better for you because you can undock the retrieve segments over here with this one and drag that off onto a second screen, have a full-size screen of retrieve segments and a nearly full-size document browser. That'll make a bit more sense when we get to that. For now, we've only got one screen within the constraints of GoToMeeting, so I'm just going to return to the one that I started with, and I'm just demonstrating how you can move the horizontal dividers independently of each other, but the vertical divider in this layout is common to all four windows. Now, let's go and start a new empty project and see. So I'm just going to open up a new project. I'm going to put it on my desktop and I'm going to call it Demo. And today is the 18th of December, I think. And save that. So I'm just creating a brand new project. And there we are, MAXQDA. I didn't show this before, but at the very top bar of the screen, even above the menu bar, it always shows the path and project file name of the project you're working in. If you've got multiple versions of your main project, very good idea to keep checking, or check every time you start up at least, that you have got the version that you intended. So now I have an empty project. So I'm just imagining what it's like to start completely from scratch, because if you're doing a PhD or something, one day you're going to have to take this step and start with nothing. And it's interesting, as I started up a new project, it has jumped not onto the home ribbon, but straight away onto the import ribbon, because it knows the first task in a new project is to bring some data in. So it's offering me all of the import functions. Now I'm just going to open up some basic texts, the transcripts rather like the ones from the example project, but I'll just point out there are specialized imports for all kinds of specialized data along here. So if you're working with focus groups, for example, there's a special import for focus group transcripts. If you're working with survey data, there's an import that will separate the closed questions into the variables and the open questions into texts. There's a special import for Twitter data, YouTube transcripts and videos, web pages. Even you can do your literature review in a MAXQDA project by importing reference manager data and things like that. But let's just open up a basic import a text. MAXQDA has many good habits. One of them is that it remembers where you went the last time you were importing, so it's just come up straight away. So I can just select It's come to the folder where I store some documents. I'm just going to select the first one, Alex, click the open button, and Alex will be brought into the project. At least I expected it would be. Something isn't happening. It would normally be in by now. Oh, here we are. Yes, not quite sure why that took a moment. That was unnaturally long, but never mind. My computer must be running slow. So Alex has appeared here in the document system. That's the name of the document. And it's also been opened in the document browser, ready to work on. But I may not be happy just to have all my documents in one long list in the document system, so MaxQDA gives us other ways of working. There's a little toolbar on the top of each window. So here in the document system, here are the document system tools, and here in the document browser, here are the document browser tools. One of these ones here is a document group. So I'm just going to open a new document group, and I'm going to call it New York, because I know that some of these interviews took place in New York. So I can create the document group, and I can then just drag Alex quickly into the New York group and put him in that place. So that's fine. Now with New York selected, if I import another document, it'll go into that. Now I started that import from that command, but MaxQDA for these main functions often has 2 or 3 different ways of doing things. And a very important route in MaxQDA is the context menu. So if I click on the New York group here, so I didn't mean to get quite that effect, and do a right mouse click at this point of the screen, I get a menu of all things that could be done to the New York group of documents. These are all things that could be done to a group of documents. And halfway down, we've got import documents. So if I use this way, I know that any document I import now will go into the New York group. Notice also there's a keystroke, so if you don't want to do too much with the mouse, if you memorize the Control+D on a Windows keyboard, you can do lots of it by key. We don't want to import Alex again. Let's bring in Devin and Jamie by highlighting 2 and click the open. And that will add 2 more documents to my list. And so on. I could open up another group. I've also got another way of importing. I've just shown you the context menu. There's a button here on the toolbar which also does the straight import. So if I click on that, I could import Joanna, John, Kim. That'll do. Open those. So I'm going to add more. And these are at least coming a little bit quicker than the first one. You see why I was slightly puzzled that the first one seemed a bit slow, but these are coming through generally more quickly. 2 of them came. Why is the third one being slow? I could create another document group if I want. You can have as many document groups as you like, but that has got them in. And I can double click on any of these to move to different documents and so on. If I'm going to create another document group, which I'm going to call Photos, and just demonstrate yet another way of importing data. I've gone to my taskbar in my Windows computer, and I've opened up the File Explorer in Windows, because I'm just going to show you there's another way. This isn't the navigation screen inside MaxQDA. This is Windows File Explorer, and I'm just going to import a photograph, a JPEG, simply by dragging it from here and putting it into the Photos group. And there we are. That's yet another way. So there's lots of different ways of bringing data in, and I've shown you a few of them. You don't have to learn all of them. Find the one that works for you and carry on with that. As I've got a picture on my screen, let's just think about how you can work with pictures. On the toolbar for the document browser, I've got some zoom tools, so I could zoom in slowly, or I could jump to screen width like that, and even zoom in a bit more. I can scroll up and down. And if you want to work with photographs, you can code segments of photographs simply by dragging a box around a segment, such as this birthday cake. I can create a data segment. I haven't got any codes, but I could then attach a code to that segment. And later on, if I were to retrieve that segment down here into my retrieve segments, all I would see would be this rectangle currently shaded in a light yellow with just the cake. That's a quick introduction to how MaxQDA can work with photographs. Let's come back and let's now think about coding. Because that's a thing that you'll want to do. Now, there's lots of ways of coding. And again, as I mentioned before, MaxQDA never imposes a methodology on you. There's a whole spectrum of methods that you can use within MAXQDA, from an extreme grounded approach at one end of the spectrum to a very deductive preset analysis at the opposite end, and the whole lot of stations in between. I haven't got time to demonstrate all of them, but please bear that in mind as I show you some different things. Let me show you first of all how you can create a code. I could go to my codes menu, and there is a new code button there. That's the first way, so I click on that. Here is the new code dialog. I'm going to call this interview topics, because this is going to be a group of codes, and I'm just going to click OK, and I've created a code interview topics. I could select that code and do a right mouse click to get the context menu. So this is the menu of things that could be done to a code, and there is a new code option. This will make it a subcode of that. The first section of this interview is headed career, so I'm going to call that career. I can choose a color for this code. Let's choose a bright blue and click the additional code. Which means that I've created the career code over here, but it stays in the dialog, so I can start another one, and I'm going to call it Home Life, because I think that's a section of the interview, and I'm going to give that a different color, green, and click OK. So I've now got career and home life. I could use the button here to create a new code. Let's do that, and this one's going to be called health. So there we are, and let's give that yet another color, and OK. So there are some different ways. Oh, it's made health a subcode of career. I didn't quite want that. I can reorganize codes in my code system by dragging them around. If I drop a code when it's underlined like that, it comes to the same level in that place. If I drop a code when it's highlighted like that, it becomes a subcode of it. I don't want it as a subcode. I want it at the same level, so I've put it in the way there. Notice also when I hover over a code like this, a little green button comes up. There's yet another way of creating code. If I click on that, it will create a code as a subcode of that health. So that's some of the ways we can create some codes in advance. Let's now show how we can apply codes to some data. So this first section is called career. So if I just highlight the whole section just by dragging my mouse over it, I could pick up a code over here and drag it and drop it onto there, and that has applied the career code to that segment. When I click anywhere else on the screen, the highlight goes away. If I click on this label here, it comes back again at any stage to show me what is the segment coded there. Let me highlight, I could click on the little paragraph number like that to select a whole paragraph, and I could drag from right to left, and when I drop it on a highlighted code like that, health, that applies the health code to that segment. And there we are, that's got that. I notice health has come up with a different color bracket because that was what I created. And then we've got the home life. And again, oh no, actually, before I want to do that, I just want to draw your attention to this part of the screen. We've got a little coding toolbar underneath the document browser toolbar. And at the left-hand end of the coding toolbar is a little list of recently used codes. When I've got a code that I want to use showing in the bar here, this becomes a one-click coding button. So now I can quickly highlight the home life section, and one click on that attaches the home life code to that. You might think that looks a little bit clunky, but let me just go to the Devin and come down to the home life section of the Devin interview and quickly highlight that and one click code that, and now move to Jamie. And I'm quickly going to code the home life section of Jamie. So you're seeing how one can move more quickly by using that quick list as a way of moving from document to document, repeating the same code. There are times even in a grounded approach when you might find you want to use that. But what we've done so far is quite deductive. I've thought of a title first and then moved to create something for it. Now, there are other ways of working. I can see that people are going to talk about people in this, so I'm going to go back to the top of my code system and I'm going to create a new code which I'm going to call people. And I'm going to make its color the blue color, and I'm going to say use it as a default for all new codes. Okay, so now I've got a people one here ready. And what I could do is I might read through here, and in the home life I find, oh, here someone's talking about dad. Okay, so let's just select this paragraph and create a new code with this button here, and I'm going to call that code dad. And hopefully when I click OK, it comes in. Oh, it's come at the same level as people. I've just got to put it there. Okay, so I could have maybe selected it from there. Oh, it's also talking about mom. So let's highlight again. Actually, I want to show you something else. At the more inductive end of the spectrum is something called open coding mode. When I select this, I get a slightly different effect. If I highlight a passage, like this sentence, I'm closer to my dad than my mum. As soon as I finish highlighting, it comes up with the coding thing. So this I'm going to call mom, because that's what he's talking about. I'll talk about the other things in that box another time. So now it's created a code mom, and it's not put it in the right place, but I can move it down here, put it under dad. There we are. Organizing my code system. That is open coding. You, when you're in open coding mode, as soon as you highlight some text, let's something about sport here, so I can create a code for sport. Pardon my typing, and let's give it a different color. Okay. And it's created that code sport, attached it to that segment, and put it up in the code system up there. So that's open coding. If this is still a bit too deductive for you, there are other ways of working. I could just, I'm going to start selecting some data a bit more at random because time is short. Oh, I'm still in open coding mode. I don't want that, so turn open coding mode off now. I want to do something different. You wouldn't normally change your methods of working. I'm doing it because I'm just demonstrating. Our forefathers used to highlight, when they were working before computers had even been invented, they had highlighter pens on their paper transcripts. Here are some digital highlighter pens. Let me code this one with green. So now what I've done is I've shaded a couple of sentences in this paragraph with the green color. Now this is a more grounded approach because I'm not even imposing any meaning. I'm simply marking a passage as being of interest to me, and I might shade another one, and let's shade that with a red color, and so on. So there's another way of shading, of coding, attaching a shade. But then some people say, oh, that's a bit limiting, only 5 highlighter pens. So MAXQDA invented what it calls emoticodes. Click on this button in the coding toolbar, and this opens up a whole lot of emojis I could use. But actually, it's not just the smiley faces. We've got over 200 symbols you could use. If I click on this one, say, with this little sideways arrow, I can scroll through multiple pages of symbols. This one might have even more. So lots and lots of little colorful symbols. Now you can either use this to use something relevant to the section or something entirely irrelevant, just simply marking that as another way of color shading. This paragraph is important, but I don't want to attach any meaning to it, so I've simply given it the bowling ball as its symbol. So there are some very inductive ways of coding, and there are all sorts of things you could do in between. Let's come back up here. We had references to dad and mum. Okay, we could go to the analysis ribbon and do a lexical search. Let's search for dad. In our documents, we could say find whole words, and let's run the search. Where's everybody else talked about dad? And now we can see that Alex has, Devin has, and Jamie has. So I could, from there, decide to go into coding and attach codes to those, or I could simply go and look at Devin's interview and see what he's talking about, Dad. If I click on this row here and close this window, I've jumped into Devin's interview at the first place where Devin talks about dad. So I can now start thinking about how Devin talks about his dad, and do I want to code that? And that might be a way that you come up with a code and decide that it is relevant and important. Or now I'm in Devin, I could go to the Devin document here, and I could look at a word cloud for a single document. So this is the word cloud for the document Devin, where the more frequently a word has been used, the larger it appears in the word cloud. And I can play around with formats of this. Let's turn them all to horizontal. That's easier to read, and I can change the shape if I want. I can change the color scheme and so on. And this might make me look, okay, basketball seems quite important to Devin, and also Indiana is coming up, so maybe he's not at New York University, he's at one of the ones at Indiana University, and things like that. So I can go and investigate frequently used words, knowing that they crop up, and I could do that either by looking at one document, or I could run a word cloud on a whole group of documents from the same thing, and that might lead me in a more deductive way into coding. So that's got us started. I'm going to go back to the home ribbon, and I'm going to open up the example project that I was doing before, and go back to something that's really got much more coding work in, because time is marching on, but that's got us started. You've got an idea. So now I've come to the bigger project where we've got a lot more codes. You can see we've got a lot more of the people codes, and we've got these interview main topic codes, and we've got some other codes down here as well, and so on. So there's a lot more going on, and we've got a lot more groups of data here in this example project, other kinds of data, and so on. So what can we do with these codes once we've created them? Well, one of the things we can do is we can retrieve them into the Retrieve Segments panel. So let's look at that. You need one concept for this, and that's what MAXQDA calls activation. If I do a right-click on a document in the document system, at the very top of the context menu for a document is the word activate. When I click on that, a subtle change comes over this. Max's icon has gone red, and actually his label has gone red as well when I click on another one, and a tiny red arrow has appeared in place of the little grey disk to the left. That is the sign that the Max document has been activated, and down here in the status bar a 1 has appeared, counting one document has been activated. Note that Joanna is the open document in the document browser. Activation and open are two different concepts. So Joanna is open but not activated at the moment. Max is activated but not open. If I now activate a code such as parents, which I can do just by clicking on it there, I can retrieve the one segment which Max has talked about, parents. But I want to see more of that, so let's activate some more documents. I can activate George and Kim and Teresa, say. I've now activated 4 documents, and I still haven't got very much data. Let's bring in Alex and Jamie. Now we're getting some more. We've now got 6 documents activated, and we've got 6 data segments down here in the Retrieved Segments panel. Let me just move that a little bit. So let's look at how this Retrieve Segments panel is working. Down here, it groups the data. It's not going to work very well, I think, with the, yes, it is, that's okay. When I get to Alex's document down here, I get one header for Alex, telling me various information about Alex, and then I can see I've got 2 data segments, 3 data segments in Alex's interview where he's talked, which have been coded to parents. So it's grouped all of the parents, because that's the theme that we're looking at, data within Alex's document here. And when I want to look at anybody else, I can see that George, I've just got 1 segment in George coded to parents, and so on. This is quite a small example. In your own data, you'll get many more hits, obviously, when you do these things than I'm seeing here at the moment. But that's there are various ways we can display the data down here in the Retrieve Segments, but that is the basic idea. Now, if I click on the code bracket here of a segment, the screen all synchronizes around this one segment. So we're here in Max's document. This segment is highlighted in the Retrieve Segments. It's coded to parents, so parents is highlighted here in the code system. It's from document Max, so Max is highlighted in the document system, and the same data segment is highlighted up here in the document browser. And people sometimes ask, well, why have you got the one bit of data in 2 places at the same time? And there's a very important methodological reason for that. That reason is that down here I can compare across cases. So I can look at what Max has said about his parents and compare it with what George or Alex have said about their parents. That's great. But up here I can see the context of this statement that Max has made about his parents, and I can see that, very importantly, Max is directly asking the question about his home life. He didn't just start talking about his parents out of the blue. He was asked, how satisfied are you with your home life? So that is the context. And in qualitative analysis, context can be very, very important. You need to be a little bit careful. Sometimes it's very easy to take a short statement out of context. Down here, say this one. Now I've moved across to one in Alex's one. I might, down here, I might misunderstand something in this because I'm not aware that Max is asking, Alex is answering the question about sadness, only when I see the context. And when you've got shorter data segments, that can be even more significant. So that's how the retrieve segments starts to work. Now, if I go to the analysis ribbon, I've got a thing to reset activations. Let me just cancel all those activations. I don't want those just for a moment. I just briefly want to talk about color, because color in MAXQDA is a very important tool of analysis. You'll notice that in an interview like Alex, the brackets down here come in a variety of colors. And that can help you draw your attention to different themes by selecting different colors. It's very easy. You may remember when I created a new code. Let me just say I want to create a code for dad under parents. I've got the chance to select a color for the code as I create it, or at any other stage I can come back and change the color for this. So if I want to make dad a bright purple, I can click OK, and that has created dad as a subcode of parents with a purple color. So that's how easy it is to choose the color of your code. At any stage I could come back from the context menu, I could change that color. And I've got a big color mixer, so I could make it anything else that I want, maybe a bright yellow, and click OK, and I've changed it to that yellow. So that's how easy it is to set the color. You can use a context menu in the code bracket margin here to temporarily filter out some of the colors. I'm just going to filter out the purple and blue colors just for the moment and leave myself with greens, yellows, and so on. See, there's a purple and blue bracket there. When I click OK, those brackets have disappeared. Now I can concentrate on the red and green codes. The other codes are still there. I've simply filtered them out for a moment to look visually. If I come back and put a tick in for all the colors back on and click OK, there they are. They've come back again. So that's one of the things that you can do with color. And in the visual tools, there are things you can create portraits of documents using the color, the way the colors in the codes go. I haven't got time to show you that, but color can be a very important tool of analysis. It's very, very easy to set colors and so on. So don't overlook that. But I've talked quite a long time about coding, and coding is not the only way of working with your data. Our forefathers also used to scribble notes in the margins of their transcripts when ideas occurred to them as they were looking through their transcripts, reading them, and so on. And I'm now trying to find, I think if I go into Jamie, I can find, yes, here are some memos. This little symbol is an indication that in this example project, a memo or two have been written. Now, we've got a new panel on this version of MAXQDA, a new sidebar we can open up in the document browser, and you can make it as wide or as small as you like. And I can choose to, in this panel, I can choose to see either memos and comments, or memos and paraphrases, or just memos. I'll have memos and comments. I'll keep to that. So here, if I've written a memo, and somebody has written a memo here, issues of doubt, both self and family, this memo is attached to this segment, which is highlighting here. And if I click the down arrow, I can jump to the next memo where something more longer has been written here. And if I want to edit this memo, if I double click on it, I can open up the memo. This is the screen where a memo is created, and I could edit it, add more comments, add more notes, and so on to the memo, and so on. So lots of things you can do with memos. It's very easy to create a memo. Let's just scroll down a bit further down in Alex. Actually, yes. Alex makes a comment here. I just felt like such an idiot. And let's make a note about that. If I right-click on that, highlight it, do a right-click, here comes the context menu, and I can insert a memo. Here is the memo dialog, and I can type a meaningful comment, but I'm a bit short of time, so I'm just going to quickly type in some nonsense. I've got various symbols I can use, so let's use the half orange symbol for it and close it. And there we are. I've created a memo just as easily as that. So an idea comes to you, you can capture that idea and attach it to your data, and there it's there in your project for a long time afterwards. Now you can also create memos over here in the document system. So if I do a right click on a document, I can open up a memo over here. Now this works exactly the same as the others, but it's a little bit different in that there's only one memo in this part of the screen in the document system for each document. It's a good place to put any notes that you might have made at the time of doing your interviews, such as notes about whether your respondent was anxious or nervous, were you alone, were you interrupted, things like that. You'll probably note them in a notebook at the time you're carrying out your interview. If you type up those notes into this memo here, then later on, whenever you hover over that symbol on the screen, you can read those notes. You haven't got to go scrabbling to find your notebook in the filing cabinet or the desk drawer. It's just there on screen, and it will inform your analysis of that interview when you come to that part. Similarly, we can open up memos for the codes. And if I just double click on my DAD code here, in that place where the memo would appear, I could use the context menu as well. This time, bear with me while I type, because this is a good place to record any rules and a definition for this code. Hopefully I'm typing that reasonably well. Definition ends with an N, not an M. Rules and definitions. I hope it's reasonably self-explanatory. When you're, especially if you're working inductively, sooner or later you need to decide what your codes really mean. That will be its definition for the code, and the circumstances in which a code should be used, and maybe those in which it should not. These are your rules and definitions. Once you've created those and put them into a code memo, at any stage you might be highlighting a bit of data and you're not sure, is this the right code to use? You can read your rules and definitions. No, that wasn't. Move on to this one. Oh, that's more of a theoretical memo about friendship and so on. And here's another memo about assessments and so on. I haven't got very well populated memos here in this example yet, but if you populate your own with those, they'll help you to code more consistently, accurately, and so on. And now, we've got a new, in this version of MAXQDA, we've got a new menu option for memos. If I click on this Memos menu bar, we've got lots of things about memos. I've got the chance to create a free memo. Let me just click on the in-document memos, because we've got a completely new screen pops up showing me all the memos that are in-document memos. There are 10 of them so far in this project. So these are memos that have been attached to a little segment of text somewhere, and I've got a scroll bar at the side here. I can read and compare these various comments and notes that have been made here. We should somewhere find, there's my nonsense one that I did just a few moments ago in this webinar down at the bottom. We've got a whole structure of interviews showing where the memos are in the various documents and document groups and so on, and we can reorganize this in different ways. If you've got lots and lots of memos, you've got different ways. We've got tools that we can search in these memos. Here we are, here's a search in memos if you want to find a keyword to locate something in a memo. We can look at different types of memos. We can open up the codes and close off the document. So now I've moved to the code memos. There are only 4 of these in here and so on. So memos can become a really significant tool of analysis. And I just at this point like to emphasize that whatever the project that you're working on, whether you're doing a PhD, a master's degree, or you're working in a commercial research organization, almost certainly the end object of your research and analysis will be a report or a presentation. You're going to have to summarize, write up in your own words, your discoveries, your conclusions, your results of your research. Well, it's never too late to start writing. A memo, it would be wonderful if a memo that you created on the day you first imported data into your project might one day make it all the way through and become a sentence in your final project. That'd be fairly extraordinary, but wouldn't it be wonderful? You'd be so pleased that you wrote that memo at the very beginning. An idea that occurred to you right at the start has made it all the way through. You can edit your memos in here. You can move them about. You can change their symbols and things. Oh, and one other thing, if I just open this memo, you can link your memos to codes or even to coded segments, and you can link it to multiple codes. That's probably more useful for free memos, memos that aren't already attached to some data, but you've got the possibility of connecting your memos to other objects in your project. You might have written a free memo of some key idea, and you can then link it to an example of where that idea is illustrated well in the data and so on. So memos, please don't think that codes and coding is the be-all and end-all of qualitative analysis. Memos are a very, very important thing, and they take you more directly towards your writing. But I want to come away from memos and look at some more tools. So now I'm going to go back to what we can do with the retrieving some data. I'm going to activate all of the New York group, which I can do with one click on the New York header. So I've activated all of these documents. I hope it's intuitively obvious that these numbers in this margin here are counting how many coded segments exist in each document. So I can see here that the Teresa document has got no coded segments. We haven't yet worked on Teresa, but the others have got lots. And down here, similarly, but it's different in the code system, because in this preferences, we can choose different displays for that frequency. At the moment, I've got it coded segments in all documents, but I might choose to say how many documents have these codes been shown in, and the numbers are different. So this is telling me that the code grandparents has been used in 5 documents. If I go back and change that setting back to coded segments in all documents and close it, now oh no, I didn't want a new code. Now grandparents has got 6, so it's been used twice in one place. Perhaps that wasn't a very good example. But let me activate all of the people codes and look at the code matrix browser and see what we can do with that. So here is moving more to the quantitative end of another spectrum between the qualitative and quantitatives. Here I've got a table showing me the frequency with which each of these codes, which I've selected with activation in the code system, how often they appear in each of these documents, and I selected those with activation in the document system. And I can maybe look for patterns in these, and I can add other things. If I add the assessments codes just by activating them down there, I can bring those into the table, and if I add the Indiana interviews, I can bring those, and I could deactivate Teresa to take Teresa out. So this is a dynamic display table, so I can change the contents of it by working on my activations in the document and code systems, even after I've opened up the thing here. But some of you will tell me that you didn't come into qualitative research to look at numbers, and you just glaze over. Okay, well, you don't have to worry too much about the numbers. We can look at symbols instead. The larger the disk, the larger the circle, the more frequent, so that may help you find patterns. But you can be a little bit careful. These symbols can be calculated in different ways. For example, I could calculate them by reference to the column by clicking on this button. So now I've got to be careful to read each of these columns symbol by symbol separately. So if I look down the column Kim, I've got 3 quite frequently used codes: positive, negative, and friends. That's interesting. Jamie, I've got positive and negative almost as often as each other. But everybody's got positive just about the same, it looks. But if I change the presentation to calculation of the symbol by row, now the positive row looks very different. It's George who's got the most positive references. When I hover over it, it'll come up and tell me there are 11 segments on George. And the next most positive looks like Alex, who's got 9, whereas Max has probably got a measly, oh, he's got 5, okay. That looks quite, I would expect a bigger dot for 5. But you can see, look for some patterns by changing your symbols between the row, the column, or the whole set, and so on. So we might start looking for patterns in the way our themes fall within documents or document groups and things like that by using the code matrix browser. And there are lots of other quantitative tools that you can use that way. If that was too quantitative for you, you can do more things in the retrieve segments. Let me deactivate my code system and go and look at something called variables. In this, we can create categories for our documents. We're not only interested in which university they were at, New York or Indiana. We might also be interested in their gender and their age. These might be relevant factors in our analysis for it. So we can create, with this screen, we can create new variables. And by going to the data editor, we can populate those variables. So this is where we can put the data in. By double clicking, we can change data and so on if we want to get the data right. And then we can use those data in the analysis. No, sorry, it's in the mixed methods by doing activate by document variables. If I click on this, I could choose to use the gender variable, bring that into the middle part of the screen and set a value for my gender variable, let's say male. It's telling me there are 3 documents that have the value male on their gender variable. Click on activate, and there we are. We've now got the 3 boys, George, Vincent, and Devin, have been activated. And I've got all of these codes down here. That's rather too many. Let's just activate the positive code. So here are, down in my retrieve segments, all the positive comments that have been made by the boys in the sample. And I can work in a very qualitative way, thinking about what positive things the boys have mentioned. And I could come back to this one, go to activate by variables again, and change the, it's come up with female on this already. There are 6 of those, so I can activate that and switch from the boys to the girls. And now I've got the girls and how the girls have talked in positive ways. And I might want to look at those and make comparisons and so on. So I'm running over time. Let's come back to my my presentation and allow you to start asking questions. Has anybody asked me a question as yet? No? Okay, so if you want to send me a question, send it on the chat message and I'll answer it in a moment. But let me just talk to you a few general things about MAXQDA until those questions start pouring in. Everything I've showed you so far is available in the standard version of MAXQDA. So this is the qualitative and mixed methods analysis. I haven't shown you everything possible. That would have taken 12 hours. I've only got 45 minutes or so, but everything so far is in the qualitative mixed methods analysis. There is a larger version of the program called MAXQDA Plus, which adds some quantitative text analysis tools, very much more at the deductive end of the spectrum. If I just quickly jump back into MAXQDA and look at the MAXDictio menu, this is the MAXQDA Plus part. We've got more sophisticated word frequency tools even than the word clouds. We've got word combinations. We've got interactive word trees. We can even create multiple coding tools like dictionaries, not the normal sense of dictionary, and we can do auto coding, multiple themes in one go, or quantitative content analysis. Not everybody's cup of tea, but that's the quantitative text analysis. But incidentally, I'll just say, if you are working with open-ended survey data, open-ended questions in a survey, you may well find those some of those quantitative text analysis tools very useful in your analysis of the open questions. The Big Daddy program is called Analytics Pro, and this not only has the quantitative tools, it's got a stats module as well. That used to be total anathema when I started in this kind of work, the idea that qualitative research might involve statistics. Your sample size couldn't possibly be big enough, could it? Well, if you're doing a Twitter scrape and collecting 5,000 Twitter comments, you are getting a substantial sample size, and so it might be quite reasonable to want to do some kind of statistics regression or something on that data. So that's what that is for. There are lots of resources on the MAXQDA website, so just manuals and videos and more tuition things and so on. Quick word about licenses. I have seen some questions. I'll come to your questions in just a moment, but let me just cover this. So if you're a PhD student, if you buy a license, that will allow you to install the program on 2 computers, perhaps one in your university and one at home, and then you just move your data over the internet or on a memory stick or something. So that's a single user license, and you can buy licenses either by purchase or by subscription. Purchase one-off payment and you can use it for as long as you like. Subscription much cheaper. The license is valid for 1 year, and if you renew the subscription when you need it, you might find that a cheaper way. There are portable licenses that go on memory sticks, and there are network licenses for larger organizations, buying 5 or more licenses for team projects and so on. And there is a free version of the program called the trial version, which you can download from this address. If you want to have a further explore and play, it's a fully functional version of the program. There is no restriction on the number of documents or codes or anything like that. Any project you create in the trial version, if you subsequently buy a full license, that project will work perfectly well in your full licensed version. The only restriction on the free trial version of the program is that it only works for 2 weeks, 14 days, 1 fortnight, whichever way you look at it. Is quite a short period of time. So make sure that you've got some time, a weekend or something, to have a play. The example project that I've been using today, the English language one, does work in the example in the trial version of the project. Now, I've had some questions, so let me start looking at some of these questions. So Anthony says, is there a formal way to do a comprehensive code book, or is it just through code memos? I'm not sure I entirely understand your question there, Anthony. A comprehensive code book. You can report your code system in lots of ways. If I go to the codes one, you can export your code system out just as a code system for use in another project. If I do a right click on the code system, oh no, it's not that, not in that. Oh yes, in the more. No, that's not where I want to go. If I go to the reports, I can report my code book here. So that maybe is your comprehensive code book that you want. The memos I was talking about were your own notes about rules and definitions and what each code means. If you've created those, when you use this report your code book, those memos will come out with it, and that will make your code book more comprehensive. I hope that's answered your question. Nico is asking, can I work on my project in MAXQDA? I mean, to start writing my thesis directly in MAXQDA. Well, that's a little bit ambitious, but I suggest, Nico, if you use you can create free memos at any stage. A free memo, I'm just creating one now. There's no limit to the size, no effective limit. You can write a chapter in one free memo if you like, working on it. You'll need then to export it at a later stage with a button like this to get it back out into MS Office Word or something like that. But yes, in that way, you could start work on your thesis directly in MAXQDA. Oh, okay, Anthony's telling me I have answered his question, so that's great. Any other questions? Fire them in, folks. Otherwise, let me just say there is a conference organized by MAXQDA once a year. It takes place in Berlin, and it happens at the end of February. I always do that. I go to point to it, and Adobe covers up the page number. The 26th to 28th of February in Berlin. If you're well advanced on your projects and have got a poster or are close to creating a poster, please note there is a poster competition at the MAXQDA conference with a €200 cash prize for the winner. So if you're interested in that, look at MQIC at MAXQDA or just follow the links on the MAXQDA website where you found this webinar. I will be doing some teaching workshops at that conference. So if you want to come and meet me face to face, book in for one of my workshops at the conference. It would be great to meet you. Oh, I'm getting another question here. So Karine is asking, which transcribe program do you recommend? Does this program allow you to make transcripts of audio? A very good question, Karine. And we've got lots of things I can answer you on that. Let me just reset all my activations here. If I go to the import function, import menu, we have a whole option for transcripts here. If I click the pull down, this shows you all of the import transcripts options. So if you want to, some people want to use automatic transcription programs. These are being developed, and here is a long list of automatic transcription programs that will have a go at doing your transcript for you. Or generally, if you've got a transcript in another program that you've done outside MAXQDA which has got timestamps, you can use this to import it or that. But if you want to, you can also import your audio by clicking on this button here. And then, yes, inside MAXQDA, you can transcribe inside the program. MAXQDA will, when you import a pure audio file, it will import that audio into the project, and it will create a document in your document system with the same name as the audio file, an empty document, but you could then use that document. There are transcription routines inside the program. If we open an audio document, have I got in this, I've got a video document. It's not a very good example. Yes, you can transcribe inside MAXQDA, but I run out of time for demonstrating that today. I'll just say thank you very much for your company today. If you've enjoyed it half as much as I have, you've had a good time. I'll let you go by signing off with the MAXQDA saying, research is a journey, travel it well. And that's what I'd wish for each and every one of you. Travel your research journeys well.